Well, the Kremlin has confirmed a group of Russian investigators have arrived in Turkey following the killing of Ambassador Andrei Karlov.
In Moscow, Russian and Turkish foreign ministers laid flowers in tribute to the ambassador. He was murdered in Ankara by an off-duty policeman who shouted, "Don't forget Aleppo." We're joined now by Foreign Affairs writer Tim Marshall. Hello to you, Tim. In the aftermath of this, a lot of questions were being asked about the impact that it would have on Turkish-Russian relations. We've had some information coming out in the last few minutes that Russia is drawing up a Moscow declaration setting out a roadmap to end the Syria crisis and hoping that Turkey and Iran will support the declaration. What is the mood music?
Well, that is the reason why last night there was what I regarded as loose talk, that this was a 1914 moment, assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, that the things would now tumble into war. It's not the right template, and the reason it's not the right template is because then everyone knew they were going to fight eventually and the armies were all lined up and the alliances. This is completely different. Turkey and Russia are two of the biggest players now in Syria, and they have different interests, but they coincide. Even though Turkey doesn't like Assad, what it wants more than anything is to prevent the Kurds from having one piece of territory. The Russians want to prop up Assad and make sure they win this war. So it's in their interests to cooperate on this particular issue. So when something awful like this happens, the instinct is not, right, I want an excuse to make things worse. It's no, we need to find ladders to climb down and make sure that we don't make it worse, which is what happened. Erdogan was straight on the phone to Putin, saying, oh my God, this is terrible what's happened, we'll cooperate. The Russian Foreign Ministry was very quick to come out and say the Turks are cooperating. Both sides immediately said, this is to try to divide us, we're not going to be divided, which explains today's announcement. And the last bit of this jigsaw is that if you look at who is now capable of possibly putting together a peace deal, it's not the Americans, it's not the British. They both abrogated responsibility and involvement years ago. It's not the French. The only people on one side that can put together a deal for Syria is the Russians, the Turks, and the Iranians. And all this talk about Russia being isolated, I don't see any isolation there.
No, I mean, it's been a difficult relationship, particularly in the last year, hasn't it, since Turkey shot down the Russian fighter plane. But we are seeing, and particularly in that language last night and in the statements we've had today, again, a united front almost, perhaps the most united.
It is close to a united front when you consider what has happened. And I thought that it was a more serious incident last year when the Russian plane was shot down, because that was the act of a state against a state. This looks like the act of a lone terrorist or a terror group against an individual.
And at that point, Putin was talking about Turkey as accomplices of terrorists.
Yes, that was more dangerous because the stars had not aligned on Syria the way they have. But even that they got over. They broke diplomatic relations for a while and they recently reinstalled them. So give that template and park it. But also, when you look at the economic agreements between them for oil pipelines, for agriculture and for tourism, there's a lot of reasons for them not to fight each other. And that's where they are now. And you will now see these three countries, Iran, Turkey and Russia, acting in unison. I don't know if they're all going to sign this agreement, but acting in unison as a bloc to try to bring an end to the Syrian tragedy. Now, obviously, there's people on the other side who won't necessarily like their terms. I'm not saying it is the end, but we are definitely seeing, with the fall of Aleppo and with this statement out of Moscow, we are seeing the beginning of the end. Now, if you take the first section, the beginning, 3 years of the FSA and the uprising having the upper hand, the second 3 years, the middle of the fight back by Assad, well, that's 6 years. And this beginning of the end could even take as long as 3 years.
OK, Tim Marshall, thanks very much indeed for talking to us.